People will throw God under the bus for the smallest little thing, and some of that creates denominations. We're the problem. The word isn't the problem. We're the problem.
With denominations in the Protestant specifics, like with so many different disagreements, how do we not seem kind of like the modern day, like Pharisee, Sadducee kind of situation with like how, some people believe a certain thing about God and that is spiritual and, another thing is different.
Well, I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis. The truth is sometimes we are Pharisaical. I think more churches split over non-essential theological things than they do essential theological things. In fact, a friend of mine who is a pastor recently said this to me. He said, you can say whatever you want from the pulpit as long as it doesn't puncture any sacred cows people have. In other words, you can get up and say, there are 9 members of the Trinity, and most people, like Benny Hinn used to say, oh, there are 9, well, great, that's fine. But if you start saying, you can't sleep with so-and-so because God wants you to save yourself for marriage, oh, I got a problem with that, right? People are more concerned about how things affect them than knowing who the true God is, which should affect how they live. But theological heresy, people don't pick up on because they don't study for theological heresy. Many people go to church for just the community, and as soon as there's a conflict in their lives, they're going to throw Jesus under the bus in a heartbeat. And this is especially true on the sexual issues. In fact, my mentor, Dr. Norman Geisler, used to say this, that fraternity will almost always overcome theology. What did he mean by that? Well, he meant that if you're a parent and suddenly your kid comes home and says, hey, mom, dad, I'm LGBTQ or whatever, the parent is more tempted to throw away what God says about the issue in order to affirm their child, and now they support LGBTQ causes, for example, because they think they're helping their child by doing so. And it's all about love, right? What they never think of is that love doesn't mean approval necessarily. And every parent in here, by the way, knows this. In fact, how many parents do we have in here? All right, how many former children do we have? Okay, good, that's all of us. Hey, if your parents approved of everything you wanted to do when you were a teenager, would they have been loving? No, you can't approve of everything somebody wants to do if you're going to be a loving parent. You've got to stand in the way of evil, otherwise you're enabling people. Love does not mean approval. In fact, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13, the passage that everybody reads at their wedding but nobody obeys. Love always protects. Love does not rejoice in wrongdoing. Love rejoices in the truth. Love always perseveres. It doesn't say love always agrees. No, if you're going to love people, you have to stand in the way. So people will throw God under the bus for the smallest little thing, and some of that creates denominations. We're the problem. The word isn't the problem. We're the problem. In fact, I was just reading yesterday about this because I have a presentation on why there's so many denominations. I was just reviewing it. Do you realize that no matter what you're talking about, whether you're talking about the Constitution, whether you're talking about evolution, or whether you're talking about Christianity, you will have all sorts of different perspectives on each of those 3 categories. We can go on with other subjects, right? There are at least 8 different ways to view evolution today. And they disagree. This is a scientific issue, right? There's several different ways that people view Christianity. There's several different ways people view the Constitution, right? Despite what the clear language says. We're the problem. It's not the Bible's problem that people come to it and try and hobby horse on it or try and get it to say something it doesn't say.
Yeah, so where I add with that is like how as like modern day apologists or just Christians in general, when we read the word and then we hear a denomination speak something that afflicts it or like seems controversial, how do we go about, either assuring that we're in line with God when we have that judgment, and then how do we apply that in a healthy way to someone? Because obviously it's not a matter of we're determining their salvation. That's all in God's hand.
That's right.
It's rather about leading someone to, a better view of how God intended. I meant a way of saying it, but
it's going to be a case-by-case basis,
sure.
But we major in the majors and minor in the minors. And Paul says in Romans 14, essentially, that there are disputable matters where we can agree to disagree over, and don't put your conviction on another person. Like the example he uses is wine and meat sacrificed to idols. If you think it's wrong to drink wine, fine, but don't put that particular burden or that particular rule on your brother, and vice versa. Those are disputable matters, but it's not disputable whether God exists. It's not disputable whether Jesus rose from the dead, right? It's not disputable whether or not Jesus is God. It's not disputable that we're saved by grace through faith. So those are the matters that we'll die on. We'll fight on a hill to die on, but the secondary and tertiary issues we won't. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks, Daniel.